There's a law of human nature that most people will never fully understand until they've been broken by it. It's not loud, it's not glamorous, and it sure isn't fair, but it works like gravity. The more emotional weight you give to someone who does not value you, the further they drift from your orbit. It feels backward, doesn't it? You think that showing up for them, loving them harder, proving your loyalty, bending yourself to be seen, will pull them closer. That if you give more of your heart, they'll finally offer you theirs. But it doesn't work that way, not in the real world, not with emotionally unavailable people, and definitely not with someone who only feels powerful when you're chasing. Carl Jung said, "What you deny in yourself, you project onto others." And when you're chasing someone who's rejecting you, you're not really seeing them. You're seeing the reflection of your own hunger, your own wounds, your own story of, maybe if I just try harder, they'll finally love me. But they won't. Because attention without boundaries only feeds ego, not love. And if you want them to feel your value, begging them to notice, it will never work. You have to let go. Not out of bitterness, not out of revenge, but from a place of grounded, silent power. That's where Stoicism comes in. Because once you master your response, you stop giving them the fuel to control the narrative. You're not ignoring them to play games. You're detaching because their inability to see your worth is no longer your emotional emergency. Let me be very clear. This guide is not about manipulation. It's not about making them cry by pretending to be unbothered while secretly falling apart. No, this is about an inner shift so deep that your soul no longer flinches when they don't text back. It's about becoming so sovereign in your energy that their presence no longer feels like oxygen and their absence no longer feels like death. You will attract them more by doing nothing than you ever did by doing everything. Because the moment you stop orbiting them and return to your center, you become magnetic. Not desperate, not loud, but magnetic. You're no longer asking, "Why don't they want me?" Instead, you're watching them spin in circles, trying to figure out why they suddenly crave the version of you that no longer needs them. Maybe you've been ghosted. Maybe you're still in the relationship but feel like you're slowly disappearing inside of it. Or maybe, finally, you're done waiting, done hoping, and ready to heal. This is for you. Every moment you reclaim from obsessing over them is a message to the universe. I remember who I am. And I refuse to be reduced to a placeholder in someone else's life. When you detach like that, not from hate, but from deep inner alignment, they feel it. Oh, they feel it. Even if they act like they don't. Even if they post like they've moved on. Trust me, your silence is haunting them. Your peace is provoking them. And your absence. It's the loudest reminder they ever got of what they lost. So, if you're ready to flip the dynamic, if you're ready to stop bleeding love and start commanding respect, then stay with me. This isn't about revenge. This is about realignment. We're about to walk through 8 steps that will rewire your entire emotional strategy and leave them wondering how they ever fumbled you in the first place. You were never too much. They were simply too small to hold you. Don't just nod your head and scroll. Don't just feel it. Own it. If something in your chest stirred, if your gut whispered, "This was for me," then I want you to make it real. Lock it in. Prove to yourself and to the universe that you're no longer available for begging, chasing, or shrinking. Go to the comments right now and write, "I detach with dignity." Not later. Not maybe. Do it like your future self is counting on you to break the cycle. Do it like the version of you who finally healed is watching from the finish line, nodding in silent approval. And if this hit that deep, hit the like button, subscribe, and stay with me, because we're about to go even deeper. Number 1. Detachment is the new desire. They'll tell you to just let go, as if detachment is some magic button you press, and suddenly the ache disappears, as if you could wake up one morning, stretch your arms, and feel nothing for the one who made your soul twist in knots. But detachment isn't a button, it's a discipline, a rewiring of the nervous system, a slow, quiet rebellion against every urge that once pulled you into emotional servitude. You don't detach overnight. You reclaim yourself inch by inch, breath by breath, until the need to be seen by them evaporates into the dignity of being seen by yourself. At first, it feels impossible, like trying to ignore a fire alarm while the smoke's still in your lungs. You'll want to text, you'll want to explain, you'll want to make them understand what they walked away from. Because that old part of you still believes if they could just see your heart clearly, they'd come running. But they won't. And deep down, you already know that. Because if they could see your worth, they would have never put you in a position to doubt it in the first place. You're not hard to love. You were just offering your devotion to someone emotionally bankrupt. And detachment, my love, is how you stop making those deposits. This is where Stoicism meets emotional intelligence. You're not detaching to become cold. You're not going numb. You're simply turning down the emotional thermostat so your power stops leaking out to people who haven't earned it. Think of your attention like sunlight. Too much of it on the wrong soil and nothing grows. But when you pull that light back, when you water your own garden instead of begging someone else to notice your bloom, everything changes. They feel it. Oh, they feel it. And not because you announced your exit, but because the warmth is gone. The audience is empty, and silence is now louder than your devotion ever was. There's something else that happens too, something they don't tell you about detachment. It wakes them up, not right away, not the moment you stop texting or liking their posts. But over time, the absence grows heavier than your presence ever did. Because when you stop performing for their attention, you force them to sit alone in the theater they built to feed their ego. No more applause, no more validation, just echo, stillness, space. And in that space, the question creeps in, why did they stop trying? That's when desire flips. That's when the one who dismissed you starts replaying every moment you gave freely, now hungry for what they once ignored. Still, let's be honest, it's going to feel like hell before it feels like power. Your body's used to craving their approval like oxygen. You've trained yourself to believe their presence is proof of your worth. So detaching will feel unnatural at first, like trying to breathe underwater. Your mind will scream, your hands will shake. You'll look at your phone 1,000 times hoping for something that never comes. That's okay. That's part of the process. You're not weak for feeling it. You're strong for choosing not to act on it. Because real detachment doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care about yourself more. It means you've decided to stop auditioning for roles in other people's lives while forgetting you're the main character in your own. It means you stop chasing those who run and instead walk toward the version of yourself that never needed to beg. The you who knows that silence can be sacred, that not reacting is a flex, that holding back is a declaration of worth far louder than any words you could send at 2 a.m. You want a metaphor? Imagine you're holding sand in your hand. The tighter you squeeze, the more it slips through your fingers. That was you, clutching so hard to someone who was never meant to be contained. But now you let it rest. You open your palm. You release control. And suddenly the sand stays longer. Not because you're forcing it, but because you're no longer chasing. You've become the calm, the center, the peace they never thought you'd find without them. And if you're asking, what if I detach and they never come back? Then I'll ask you this. What if they were never supposed to? What if the goal was never to get them back, but to get you back? To rescue the version of you that forgot how radiant you are when you're not busy convincing someone to love you. Let them go. Let the silence do the teaching. Let the distance deliver the consequence. They weren't scared to lose you when you were desperate to stay. But your indifference, that's a storm they never saw coming. So the next time you feel that urge to break your own silence, just to see if they'll respond, stop. Breathe. Remember who you are. You are the prize. You are the closure. You are the storm and the calm after it. And every second you hold your ground, you shift the power. You rewrite the story. You make them feel exactly what they tried to hide from: regret. Say it with me and don't whisper it. Write it in the comments so your future self knows you meant it. Type it like a promise to your healing. My detachment is my power. Write it like you're done begging, like you're done shrinking, like you're done watching them fumble what they'll never find again. And if this cracked something open inside of you, if you felt seen, understood, or empowered, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and don't go anywhere. We're only just beginning. Number 2. Jung's shadow mirror. Let them wrestle with themselves. Here's the part they never saw coming, the part that haunts them in the silence you left behind. When you were explaining yourself, when you were pouring your heart out, trying to fix what they broke, they could ignore their guilt. As long as you were loud, emotional, trying to win them back, they could stay in control. But when you went quiet, something shifted. Not just on the outside, but inside them. That's what Carl Jung tried to show us. The things people refuse to face in themselves, the shame, the fear, the inadequacy, don't just vanish. They get projected onto others. And when you were in their life, showing up fully, loving them despite how they treated you, you were unknowingly absorbing all their shadow. You became the emotional sponge for what they couldn't carry. Their coldness, that wasn't about you. Their distance, their betrayal, that wasn't your fault. It was their own wound, trying to escape responsibility, trying to find someone else to carry the mirror. But now you've taken that mirror and handed it back to them, and they hate it. Not because you're doing anything aggressive. In fact, you're doing nothing at all. You've detached. You've gone still. You've stopped feeding the narrative they depended on. And in that stillness, they're forced to look directly into themselves without your distraction to block the view. That's when the shadow rises. That's when their ego starts scrambling to rewrite the past. But the past keeps echoing back your silence, your peace, your absence. That mirror doesn't lie. You've become the reflection they can't escape. The one they ignored is now the one they can't stop thinking about. And it's not because you said something clever. It's not because you finally found the perfect words. It's because you stopped speaking altogether. And now they're stuck wrestling with the version of themselves you revealed through your grace. You didn't attack. You didn't expose. You just held your ground. And that did more damage to their delusion than any insult ever could. You need to understand this. Insecure people build their identity on emotional control, and you were part of their emotional economy. The more you tried to explain, prove, love, beg, the more powerful they felt. But the moment you stopped, the structure collapsed. They're not just missing you. They're missing the false version of themselves they could pretend to be when you were still in the room. Because you gave them space to hide from their guilt. And now, that space is gone. What's left? Shame. Self-doubt. Late nights, replaying moments they thought they were too cold to care about. That's what happens when the mirror is no longer cracked by your emotion. You'll probably never hear the full truth from their lips. Most people aren't emotionally mature enough to admit what your absence has exposed, but don't let the silence fool you. Just because they're not telling the story doesn't mean it isn't haunting them. Trust me, they feel it. Every time they scroll through their phone and see your name, but not your presence. Every time someone else tries to love them, but it feels empty because it doesn't carry your light. Every time they lie to themselves and say you were the problem, but the guilt keeps knocking louder than the lie can cover. That's the shadow wrestling with them. That's your calm doing the work. No revenge needed. So what do you do now? Nothing. You become the mirror. Not out of pride, not out of bitterness, but because it's the most powerful position you can stand in. You no longer fight for your place in someone's story. You become the chapter they can't stop rereading in their mind, the one that stings every time they try to act unbothered. That's how you win, without even raising your voice. If this hit your chest like a silent truth you've been waiting to hear, go to the comments and write this now. My silence is my mirror. Let the universe hear you. Let your future self feel the shift. No more chasing, no more explaining, just calm, presence, power. And if this sparked something deep inside you, hit that like button, subscribe, and stay right here. We're only just getting started. Number 3, silent standards, boundaries that speak louder than words. You don't need to yell, you don't need to explain, you don't need to announce that you're done. In fact, the more quietly you move, the more power you gain. That's the secret they don't want you to learn. Most people are addicted to words, endless talking, justifying, arguing, begging to be understood. But the moment you stop using your voice to earn respect, and instead start using your standards to enforce it, everything shifts. They'll notice. Not because you said something dramatic, but because you finally stopped saying anything at all. Boundaries don't need a spotlight. They don't need to be screamed from a rooftop. Real boundaries are felt, subtly, strongly, and silently. No more answering texts at midnight when they only remember you in the dark. No more rushing to fix a mess they created, just to keep the connection alive. No more softening your truth so they don't feel guilty. Every time you enforce a boundary, without fuss, without needing applause, you raise your value. You become the mystery they underestimated, the line they can't cross anymore. And the silence? That's the sound of you taking your power back. You see, people who were never taught emotional accountability often confuse kindness with weakness. They push and test just to see how far you'll bend, how much you'll tolerate before you break. And when you kept giving, they didn't say thank you. They didn't grow closer. They grew entitled. That's what happens when standards are replaced with sacrifice. But now, your silence is no longer weakness. It's structure, it's strength, it's clarity without the drama. Think about it. When someone disrespects you and you respond with 10 paragraphs, you give them control. You teach them that if they just trigger you enough, they'll get your energy. But when you say nothing, when you just pull back, not out of malice but out of self-respect, they feel it, like a door quietly closing. No slamming, no shouting, just the sound of something sacred being sealed shut. And they won't say it out loud, but they'll feel the panic. Why didn't she respond this time? Why did her tone change? Why do I feel like I'm losing access to something I used to take for granted? That's the power of silent standards. You're not throwing a tantrum, you're just no longer available to be used. They'll notice when you don't show up to fix things. They'll notice when you don't reply within 5 minutes like you used to. They'll notice when your heart is no longer for sale to someone who couldn't afford it in the first place. You don't need to explain why you're pulling back. Let them wonder. Let them replay the last message and analyze the shift in your tone. Let them sit with the consequence of your boundary, because real value is quiet. Stoics knew this. They believed that virtue didn't need to shout. It shows, it radiates, and it makes the wrong people deeply uncomfortable because they can no longer manipulate it. You've stopped being predictable, and in doing so, you've become powerful. So here's what I want you to remember. Your boundaries are not about punishing others. They're about protecting your peace. They're a signal to the universe that you finally understand your worth. And once you enforce them, the right people will rise to meet them, and the wrong ones will remove themselves. If this hit your spirit, if you're ready to stop over-explaining and start letting your silence speak, I want you to write this in the comments right now. My standards are non-negotiable. Say it like your future depends on it, because it does. Hit that like button, subscribe, and stay with me. We're just getting started. Number 4. The vacuum effect. How absence becomes ammunition. There's a reason your absence feels louder than your presence ever did. It's not just silence, it's space, and the human mind is terrified of space it can't control. Nature hates a vacuum, so does the ego, especially a bruised one. When someone gets used to your energy, your messages, your laughter, your availability, they begin to treat it like background noise, constant, predictable, taken for granted. But when that frequency suddenly goes silent, when you stop showing up in their notifications, their world shifts. They don't admit it. They act cool, indifferent, even detached. But inside, there's a storm. Because now, you're gone, and they don't know why. That not knowing is what begins to eat them alive. At first, they tell themselves stories. She's just busy. She's probably trying to get my attention. But the more time passes, the less their stories hold up. Your absence becomes a riddle they can't solve, a quiet mystery that grows louder every day. You see, when you were there, emotionally invested, always reaching out, they never had to wonder. They never had to miss you. They were full of your validation, full of your energy, full of your light. But now you've walked out and taken all of that with you, and they're left in an emotional famine they didn't prepare for. Don't underestimate what happens in that famine. They start remembering things they once brushed off. The way you smiled when they were tired, the way you listened when they had nothing valuable to say, the way you held space, even when they didn't show up for you in return. Those memories, they're no longer sweet. They sting because they didn't cherish them when they had the chance. And now their mind replays the footage, trying to figure out where it all went wrong. That's the vacuum working. That's your absence turning into psychological pressure. This is what people don't tell you. Silence is a form of confrontation. It's not passive. It's not avoidance. It forces people to face what your presence used to protect them from their own reflection. Your light once made them feel valuable. Your attention kept their insecurities quiet. But now they hear their own doubt louder than ever. That doubt grows into regret. That regret turns into obsession. Why? Because they never expected you to leave. They expected you to break, to text again, to fold the way you always did. But this time, you vanished, and they can't breathe without your energy on standby. They start testing the waters. A meme, a vague message, a subtle, "You good?" But it's not real concern, it's bait. They want to know if the hook still works, if they still have access to you, if the emotional buffet is still open. And when you don't bite, when you hold the silence a little longer, that's when they panic. That's when they start spiraling into late-night overthinking and early-morning confusion. And maybe a part of you is tempted to reach out, to check if they've noticed, to break the silence just enough to prove that it's working. But don't. Hold the line. The vacuum does the work for you. When someone is used to being full of you, your absence becomes the punishment they never expected, but absolutely earned. Let them starve for your presence. Let them thirst for your energy. You don't need revenge. You don't need closure. You need distance. That's your new weapon. Not bitterness, not games. Just quiet removal and grounded indifference. They used to think your attention was guaranteed. Now they realize it was a gift. They used to think you'd always be there. Now they're counting days like they're counting scars. And you're not watching the door anymore. You're not waiting for the apology. You're not hoping for validation. You're living, you're healing, you're choosing peace over performance. And that, my love, is the greatest shift of all. So if you're holding the silence right now, if you're resisting the urge to reach back just to feel something, stay strong, stay centered, because the less they hear from you, the louder their thoughts become. And in that void, your value finally echoes. Write it in the comments right now. My absence speaks volumes. Type it like a promise to your future self. Say it like you're done shrinking. Say it like the silence is sacred. If this just stirred your soul, smash that like button, subscribe, and stay locked in. There's more fire coming. Number 5. Sovereign routine. Building a life they can't interrupt. There comes a moment in healing where you have to make a decision. Do I keep living in the echo of their absence, or do I start building a life so full, so vibrant, so sovereign that their absence becomes irrelevant? This is where most people get stuck. They let their routines rot in the shadow of a person who isn't even thinking about them anymore. They spend mornings scrolling, afternoons overthinking, nights staring at a phone screen, waiting for a ghost to text back. That's not a life. That's emotional starvation disguised as loyalty. And the truth is, they're not coming back because you waited. If they return, it will only be because they saw you move on without them. So it's time to replace rumination with ritual, time to stop giving your best energy to people who drained you and start reinvesting it into yourself, not out of spite, but out of wisdom. Start waking up like your future depends on it, because it does. Take back your mornings, go move your body, take a walk, hit the gym, dance in your room. Whatever you need to do to interrupt the mental loop that says, I miss them, because every time you choose a ritual over a relapse, you tell your subconscious, I belong to me now. This is about reclaiming rhythm, about rebuilding your day with such intentionality that there's no longer a gap for them to creep back in. You make your bed like royalty sleeps there. You eat like your body deserves fuel, not punishment. You turn your evenings into ceremonies, books, candles, music, painting, poetry. Creativity becomes your new intimacy. You stop waiting to be invited into someone else's story and start writing your own with trembling hands and a fearless heart. That's how power returns. The Stoics believed that a disciplined life was a free life. That routine wasn't a cage, but a weapon, a map back to sanity, and you'll start to feel it. The more you fill your calendar with purpose, the less room there is for fantasy. You're no longer accessible to chaos. You've become a gated garden, beautiful, thriving, but protected. Not everyone gets in. Not because you're bitter, but because you've finally learned that energy is sacred, and not everyone knows how to hold it. And trust me, they'll feel it, even from a distance, even if they don't say a word. They'll see the glow return to your face. They'll notice the silence in your stories, the shift in your eyes, the fire in your laugh. And they'll wonder, how are they doing so well without me? That's the moment the power flips. When your schedule starts to bloom, theirs wilts under comparison. They used to be your dopamine hit. Now you're your own. That's the kind of glow you can't fake. You're no longer the version of yourself who sat by the phone, making room for someone who never showed up. You're booked, you're busy, you're becoming, and that becomes unreachable to someone who once fed on your availability. They'll try to reappear when they sense your energy's been reclaimed. Don't be surprised when they test the door. But this time, you're not home. You're out living, laughing, growing. That's what sovereignty looks like, not a performance, but a lifestyle they can no longer interrupt. So if you're ready to stop waiting and start building, make this your new mantra. Say it like you mean it. Say it like your healing depends on it. Write this in the comments right now. I am no longer available to chaos. Let the world feel your shift. If this just woke something up inside you, hit that like button, subscribe, and stay with me. We're turning pain into power, one ritual at a time. Number 6. Strategic indifference. Respond, don't react. Here's the truth they never saw coming. You don't hate them. You're not even angry anymore. You've simply outgrown the emotional circus, the drama, the loop where they pull away just to see if you'll chase, then breadcrumb you back with just enough to keep you on the hook. But now, you've chosen a different game, one that doesn't run on desperation, one that doesn't feed their ego with your constant reactions. This is where strategic indifference becomes your greatest tool. Not to manipulate, but to protect what's sacred, your energy. Most people confuse indifference with coldness, but let's be clear, this isn't about shutting down your heart. This is about giving your warmth where it multiplies, not where it evaporates. It's calculated, intentional, stoic. Because every time you respond out of impulse, you devalue your presence. They text, "Hey," at midnight, and you drop everything. You just told them you're still emotionally available. But when you pause, when you take a breath, when you weigh the moment, when you respond on your time and not on their bait, you send a different message, one they can't ignore. I'm not waiting on your crumbs anymore. This shift is psychological. It rewires the power dynamic. When you stop reacting and start responding with calm precision, they don't get the chaos they were banking on. No emotional outburst, no endless paragraphs, just clarity, grace, maybe a hope all is well, maybe no reply at all, and that silence. It hits harder than any fight you used to give them, because they came back expecting access, and now they're met with boundaries. You see, people with manipulative tendencies thrive on emotional highs and lows. They want the fight. They want the reassurance. They want to feel powerful by destabilizing you. But when you give them calm instead, when you respond with measured words and firm indifference, you strip them of the control they once had. You become unreadable, unshakable, and that unsettles them more than any angry response ever could. So when that vague message shows up, the emoji, the just thinking of you, the classic, "Hey stranger," don't rush to decode it. Don't let your heart leap out of your chest hoping this is finally it. It's not. It's a test. They want to know if the door's still open, if they still hold emotional leverage, and your job isn't to slam the door shut, but to calmly lock it and keep walking. Respond only when you've grounded yourself, when you can speak without trying to be heard, when you're no longer trying to get them to see your worth, but simply reflecting your own standards back at them. Maybe that looks like a short reply. Maybe it looks like no reply at all. Either way, it's done with power, not pain. And that's the difference between reaction and response. One is rooted in emotional survival, the other in emotional strategy. Eventually, they'll notice that you're no longer flinching, that the game doesn't work anymore, that the version of you who used to panic over a message now reads it, breathes, and moves on. And that realization, that's where the regret starts to settle in, because they didn't lose someone obsessed with them. They lost someone who finally learned how to stop handing out energy for free. So if you're feeling that familiar itch to reply too soon, to explain, to reattach, pause. Ask yourself, am I reacting to the past or responding to the future I'm trying to build? Because every choice is a declaration. Every word you send is a message, not just to them, but to yourself. Choose wisely. If this just snapped something awake in you, go to the comments and write this now. I respond, I don't react. Let it be your line in the sand. Say it like it's your new rule. Say it like your peace depends on it. Because it does. Hit that like button, subscribe, and stay close. The silence is starting to work. Number 7. The shame reflex. Why their guilt grows in your calm. You want to know what truly haunts them. It's not your anger, not your crying, not your attempts to make them feel bad. Those things are easy for the guilty to dismiss. They twist your pain into blame. You're too emotional. You're overreacting. See, this is why we didn't work. Your anger feeds their narrative. It lets them keep wearing the mask, lets them feel like they were the reasonable one while you were just too much to handle. But when you stop reacting, when you let go with grace, not rage, that's when the guilt creeps in, quiet, relentless, inescapable. That's the shame reflex, and it always hits hardest in the presence of someone who's finally at peace. They expect chaos when they hurt you. They expect to see you spiral, to see you unravel, to feel needed in the wreckage they caused. It gives them a false sense of importance. But when you do the opposite, when you move forward, not loudly, not with a show, but with stillness, growth, and joy they no longer get to witness, they flinch. Not visibly, not publicly, but internally. Because you just proved something they never expected. You didn't need them to heal. And here's what really twists the knife. It's not just that you're healing, it's that you're thriving. You look better, you sound lighter, your energy is sharper, your light returned, and none of it came from them. In fact, it returned because they're no longer part of your life. That realization is brutal. Because now they're faced with the truth they tried to avoid. Maybe they were the problem all along. Carl Jung understood this deeply. He taught that when people refuse to face the parts of themselves they're ashamed of, they project it onto others. That's what they did to you. You weren't too emotional. They just couldn't sit with the discomfort of their own emotional emptiness. You weren't needy. They just had nothing to offer. But now that you've stepped out of the dynamic, now that your peace stands in stark contrast to their inner chaos, they have no one left to blame. This is why your calm hurts more than any confrontation ever could, because it forces them to see the disproportion. You're glowing while they're spiraling, you're focused while they're scattered, you're building a life they can't access while they're stuck replaying the one they lost. That's not by accident, that's by design. Your silence is not passive, it's precise. It holds up a mirror they cannot escape. No words, no arguments, just results. And results don't lie. But I want you to hear this. Don't break your peace just to prove a point. Don't reach back out just to say, look how well I'm doing. The real flex is that they have to watch from a distance, that they have to stalk your stories, scroll your posts, and wonder who you've become, without the privilege of being a part of it. That's the lesson. That's the consequence. Not because you wanted revenge, but because you chose healing so fiercely that their guilt had nowhere left to hide. So the next time you feel tempted to argue, to call them out, to remind them of how much they hurt you, don't. Your peace is doing more damage than your words ever could. They're already haunted, not by your voice, but by your absence. Not by your pain, but by your progress. And that pain, that regret, that shame, that's theirs now. You don't have to carry it anymore. If this lit a fire in your chest, if you've been calm and they're starting to flinch, type this in the comments right now. My peace exposes them. Say it with pride. Say it with power. Number 8. The return gate. Welcoming reciprocity without revenge. Here's where the story changes, not because they come back, but because you're no longer the same person they left behind. Detachment doesn't mean you're done loving forever. It doesn't mean you'll never care again. It means you've evolved to a place where love is no longer given by default. It's earned, it's filtered, and that filter? It was built from every unanswered message, every moment you begged for effort, every tear you cried, wondering if they'd ever see your worth. That pain didn't harden you, it refined you. And now, if they come back, they won't be met with the same open door. They'll be met with a gate. And this time, you hold the key. People often think strength is slamming the door shut forever, but real power, it's standing at that gate, calm, clear, untouchable, and deciding with no hate in your heart whether this version of them matches the version of you that had to rise from the ashes. That's where revenge dies and self-respect begins. You're not here to get even, you're here to get elevated. That doesn't mean you forget. It means you remember everything, but now you choose peace over punishment. That's the highest form of emotional mastery, and they'll feel it the second they try to walk back in, because they will come back. Maybe not today, maybe not in the way you imagined, but they'll return. Energy like yours doesn't fade quietly. Once you've detached, once you've leveled up, once they've sat long enough in the vacuum of your absence, they start to crave the version of you they once mistook for a constant. But here's the catch. By the time they return, you've built a kingdom, a routine, a glow, a new standard that can't be lowered just because someone finally caught up to their feelings. They'll say all the right things, apologies, regret. I've changed. But your question isn't, what are they saying? It's, who are they showing up as now? Are they consistent? Are they responsible for the pain they caused? Are they bringing clarity or just seeking comfort? You've grown past empty words. Now you want alignment. Now you want proof. And if they can't meet you there, you bless them in your mind and you keep walking. No anger, no begging, just truth. That's what Stoic detachment teaches you, not to hate, but to discern, not to punish, but to protect your peace. And if they do return with accountability, with real change, with the energy they should have brought from the beginning, you're allowed to decide if there's room for them, but it must come from power, not pain. You're not welcoming them to fill a void. You're choosing them because they now reflect the healed version of you, not because you're afraid to be alone. That's the paradox of real desire. When they realize you can love them, but you don't need them, their obsession begins. Because what used to be familiar now feels like a privilege they have to earn. So ask yourself this: if they showed up today, would they fit the life you're building? Or would they interrupt it? If you had no history with them, no memories, no old feelings, would you still want them? That's the test. Not how much they miss you, not how sorry they say they are, but whether your spirit still aligns. You don't have to slam the gate shut forever, but you sure as hell don't leave it swinging wide for anyone who simply remembers you in their loneliness. This is your new reality. You're no longer proving your worth. You're watching to see who's worthy of standing beside you. So whether they return or not, your life stays in motion. Your glow doesn't dim. Your standards don't shrink. Because closure doesn't come from them. It comes from the strength it took to rebuild without them. If you feel this truth in your bones, write this in the comments right now. I am the gatekeeper now. Let it be known. Let your future self read it loud. Hit the like button, subscribe, and keep in mind, we're not chasing, we're choosing.